As word of the valiant defense of Boston's Bunker Hill reaches Philadelphia, General George Washington writes a new will and heads off to meet his destiny. Whatever mortal fears Washington harbors, the people he meets on his way to Boston have no such misgivings about the man charged to defend them. The appointment gives universal satisfaction. I was struck with General Washington's dignity, with ease and complacency the gentleman and soldier look agreeably blended in him. Abigail Adams. Music. Cambridge, Massachusetts. Washington is in for a terrible surprise. Despite their brave defense of Breed's Hill, the men he is coming to command fail even his worst expectations. Boggling. We say that there was an army around Boston. There wasn't an army around Boston. There was a gaggle. These men are ragged, disheveled, getting drunk on duty. No knowledge of how to handle a musket efficiently. There was no discipline. There was certainly no hygiene. Very little structure. It was a mess. Music. These are Washington's revolutionaries. This is the army he has to defend against the British Empire. Whatever Washington may think of his soldiers as men, and as citizens, as soldiers, they're not much use to him. Dirty mercenary spirit pervades the whole. Could I have foreseen what I have no consideration upon earth should have induced me to accept this command? George Washington, the general, must start from scratch and personally attend to even the lowliest, most rudimentary functions. His first tasks are fundamentally administrative to us, his things that, amazingly enough, Washington has to concern himself with. So the task before him is immense, and it's going to require a tremendous amount of energy to literally whip this army into shade, and the whip will come down hard. Every man will learn discipline by Washington's very strict code for disobedience of orders, and damning his officer to receive 30 lashes on his bare back for expressing himself disrespectfully, to be stripped of his arms, put in a horse cart with rope around his neck, and drummed out of the army. General George Washington, the new army, is stitched together with widely different militias from very different colonies. Each is accustomed to its own command and its own way of doing things. Establishing a common culture is yet another overwhelming challenge. There were so many different brands of fighting traditions, cultures, and people. Washington was very concerned that there were so many rivalries, so much friction between members of his army. One of the army's most serious problems is the utter lack of ammunition and gunpowder. Music. When Washington is told that they have only 9 rounds of gunpowder per man, he is inconsolable. Advertisements in colonial newspapers plead for local gun makers to step up their production, but to little avail. Perhaps no commander in history has ever faced so many obstacles to putting together a fighting force, and even if Washington succeeds, the effort may still be doomed. Most men have signed up for just 1-year enlistments. These men are serving for very short terms. Most of them, their contracts expired either in November or December. They're only going to be around for a few months. So as soon as they become even remotely competent, they're going to go home. And he's going to have a new group to train again against these odds. Washington has Lexington, Concord, Bunker Hill. All the skill and experience in the world can't help British forces tame the chaos in the colonies. Thomas Gage now has only 7,000 soldiers surrounded by Washington's 16,000. The loss we have sustained is greater than we can bear. Small armies can't afford such losses. The rebels' number is great. So many hands have been employed. I wish this cursed place was burned. Music. Thomas Gage, October 11th. 1775. Without fanfare and without honors, General Thomas Gage is relieved of his command. Once Britain's most powerful man in America, he returns home alone, and disgraced General William Howe steps into Gage's boots and is already knee-deep in the American quagmire. In London, King George roundly rejects the Olive Branch Petition, Continental Congress's last grasp for peace. On October 26th, in his annual speech to Parliament, the king throws down the gauntlet. It has now become the part of wisdom to put a speedy end to these disorders by the most decisive exertions. King George III. What the king wants is a military solution to a political problem, but his call for war is anything but unanimous among Britain's people and politicians. But when Parliament votes, war carries the day. The military is ordered to send thousands more troops and a full armada to quell America's escalating revolution. Reinforcements can't come too soon for General William Howe. Hemmed in by the rebel siege, he and his army are virtual prisoners on the Boston Peninsula along with 1,000 loyalists they're protecting with no access to the countryside. They are unable to forage for food or with supply ships from England have yet to arrive. The people in short timers will soon be leaving in droves, and now Congress is pushing him to let go of some of his most loyal soldiers, African Americans. Music. From the very beginning, free Northern blacks have been serving well the Patriot cause with the same concerns as their white compatriots. There's no militia unit that didn't have black men. They were at Bunker Hill, they were Concord and Lexington, and everywhere else but recruiting black soldiers that he had trouble with because the Continental Congress had trouble with it. Now that the Army is a Continental Army, not just a local Northern one-armed blacks, have created a loaded issue in Congress. Southern states are adamantly opposed to making soldiers out of them. Washington is no different from any other Southern planter regarding blacks. He sounds like the Southern slaveholder he is when he issues his order banning black recruits. The rights of mankind and the freedom of America will have numbers sufficient to support them without resorting to such wretched assistance. George Washington. Music. The great irony is that the one man closest to the general is a black man, his slave Billy Lee. For the 7 years since Washington acquired him, Lee has been his master's valet and constant companion. Washington calls him my family. Billy Lee was more than just a slave to George Washington. He was his personal slave. Billy Lee went with him every place. If George Washington was the best horseman in Virginia, Billy Lee was the second best. And he and Washington would horseback ride just about every day, and so the two of them presented quite a picture that was noticed over and over by people at the time who wrote about Washington and his male servant Billy Lee. You could say that Billy Lee in fact was a close friend of George Washington, even though he was a slave. Washington. Blacks to the British side, I do hereby declare all indentured servants, Negroes or others that are able and willing to bear arms free, they joining His Majesty's troops as soon as may be. Lord Dunmore. The Dunmore Proclamation wreaks havoc throughout Virginia. Thousands of slaves flee their masters for this chance of freedom. If you have the opportunity to throw in your lot with people who are promising you a much better situation than you have had, you'd be silly not to take that promise seriously. It was the best opportunity for freedom they had ever seen, and they never knew whether such an opportunity would ever present itself again. You know, Thomas Jefferson estimates that in Virginia alone 30,000 African Americans walked off to plantation, and many of them became British soldiers. So for the British, this is wonderful. They're not only sapping the colonial economy by depriving it of slave labor, but they've added to their fighting force. Free blacks travel secretly from plantation to plantation to embolden slaves to escape. If they are caught, they risk death or torture, while the fight for liberty in the South threatens to blow the slave culture apart. The approaching New Year threatens to dissolve Washington's Northern Army. Music. We are now without any money in our treasury, powder in our magazines, arms in our stores, without a brigadier. Engineers expresses by when we shall be called upon to take the field, we shall not have a tent to lie. And I've often thought how much happier I should have been if instead of accepting a command. George Washington. Music. All seems lost even before it's begun, until a former bookseller has an idea that will change everything. January 1st, 1776. It's a new year for a new army, and General Washington raises a new flag to commemorate it, the Grand Union, with 13 stripes representing both the differences and common cause of the 13 colonies, and with the British Union Jack in the upper left to acknowledge those colonial leaders hoping to salvage a relationship with England. That same day, the colonies get the news of the King's October Proclamation to crush the rebellion by any means necessary. It's a stunning declaration by the king that rouses rebel ire more than ever, but an army needs more than anger to fight a war. Music. With the onset of winter, neither side has the supplies necessary to brave the cold and snow. The British hole up in Boston waiting for reinforcements and supplies from England, while Washington uses the time to piece together an army short on everything from manpower to gunpowder. But help is on the way. Henry Knox, a 25-year-old colonel and former Boston bookseller, is leading a trek from Cambridge to Fort Ticonderoga. On a quest for arms, Knox has taken it upon himself to recover the artillery captured from the British for Ticonderoga for 2 months in the cold and wet his men and team. Headquarters in Cambridge on January 25th, Colonel Knox delivers all of the weaponry to his commander-in-chief miraculously intact. It is the best gift Washington could ever receive. Finally, he has the firepower he so badly needs. Washington also has a Knox, a valued new commander in charge of artillery. Knox becomes part of Washington's inner circle of junior officers whose counsel he values enormously. George Washington always had the ability to listen to many people, particularly younger men. He thinks everybody's view is important, that it's a part of the puzzle. The people know things that he doesn't know, and if he can listen to enough opinions, he'll know as much as they do. A hallmark of good leadership. Right away, Washington's brain trust keeps him from making a fatal mistake. As the spring thaw approaches, Washington wants to send waves of foot soldiers down into Boston in a full frontal attack, but his officers overrule him. The British are too well fortified, and the Continentals are still short of gunpowder. They do, however, have Knox's artillery. They decide to take the highest ground, Dorchester Heights, and bombard the city. March 2nd, after months of waiting, Washington and his men are more than eager to move. The general is about to launch the first offensive of his command. He sends a stern warning to his troops. Our posterity depends upon the vigor of our exertions. If any man in action shall presume the scope hide himself or retreat from the enemy without the orders of his commanding officer, he will be instantly shot down. As an example of cowardice, General Washington, the night of March 4th, prize will be the key from 3 points outside the city: Cabo Hill, Lechmere, and Roxbury. The army rains light cannon fire down on Boston. Steep frozen slope. By morning, everything is in place. Daybreak, March 5th, on the 6th anniversary of the Boston Massacre, the British awake to the sight of 20 cannon pointed down on their ships in the harbor. My God, shocked, how exclaims, these fellows have done more work in one night than I could make my army do in 3 months. It's not until after they seek Ticonderoga's guns on Dorchester Heights that they realize they got to get the heck out of there. The Continentals don't even need to fire a shot. Howe issues a futile order for his ship's cannon to fire on the Continental position, but Washington's guns sit just out of range. Luckily for Howe's ships are also out of Washington's range. Howe and his army prepare to abandon the city and take thousands of loyalist citizens with them. One loyalist would later write, the necessary care of the women, sick and wounded required every assistance that could be given. It was not like the breaking up of a camp where every man knows his duty. It was like departing your country with your wives, your servants, your household furniture, and all your encumbrances. Over the next 2 weeks, the Continentals watch from above as all of Boston scrambles to evacuate, taking everything with them that isn't nailed down. It is a bitter exile for the Loyalists, many of whose families had lived in Boston for generations. By March 17th, they are all gone. Music. 120 ships carry 9,000 redcoats, 2,000 loyalists, and as many of the city's usable goods as possible. Out to an unknown fate, patriots return to the city, the beloved birthplace of the rebellion, and Washington enjoys the first victory of his command, but it will be his last for the rest of a grueling and humiliating year. 1776 will see 33,000 British troops. Victories in Boston. The Continental Army marches overland toward New York, having sent the British running. They are America's surprise heroes, now 10,000 strong. A new notion gathers around them, an idea that will drive the warring British and American armies on a collision course. America wants independence. Music. It will take George Washington and his citizen army everything they've got to win it. The heroes of Massachusetts, now riding high on confidence, have not even begun to taste the full power of the King's vengeance. The British are coming back, this time to deliver a more decisive blow as they move toward New York. By sea they assemble an armada the size of which the world has never seen. The British commander, General William Howe, fully understands his orders. What had begun in Massachusetts as an annoying insurgency is quickly becoming an expensive and embarrassing war. It is time to stop it. Flushed with the idea of superiority after the evacuation of Boston, the Americans desired Decisive action. Nothing is more sought for by us. General William Howe. New York is the perfect place to end this rebellion one way or another. The importance of New York City is not lost to either William Howe or George Washington. Whomever controls New York City will control the Hudson River, and by extension have the ability to sever the lines of communication between New England and the remaining colonies. This was the grand strategy that was going to subdue the rebellion that would break the colonies in half along this river, that would separate the cockpit of the revolution in Boston from the cockpit in Virginia, in New York, New Jersey, and by that means bring about the collapse of the rebellion. Loyalist and patriot is waiting for the great clash that will decide their fate. A British victory would likely end the war and return the colonies to the king. A continental win could set the colonies free. At stake liberty, the word that has been in colonial years since the outset of the year, when a slim pamphlet set America ablaze. The sun never shined on a cause of greater worth. Everything that is right or reasonable pleads for separation. The blood of the slain, the weeping voice of nature cries. 'Tis time to part. Ly. Someone has given the colonists a vocabulary of revolution, but who is the author? The words come anonymously from the most unlikely source, not a leading American, but a young immigrant starting his life over in the New World. He comes from England with little money, scant education, and few prospects, but he carries powerful ideas from the European Enlightenment, ideas that, when planted in American soil, will grow into a revolution that will change the world. The author of this incendiary manifesto, Thomas Paine. We don't have a statue of Paine. He's got to be the only founding father who has not been commemorated in marble and bronze, because he was too radical. Young Tom Paine had never amounted to much in England, though he had tried his hand at everything. He had been a house servant, a merchant marine, and even a corset maker. In each of these pursuits, he would universally fail. Paine would discover himself in Philadelphia. Like many immigrants, it becomes his blank slate, his chance to start over. Music. It is this same spirit Paine sees in America, restless, searching, ambitious, the raw makings of a new world without the burden of kings or powerful churches. It is a vision Paine turns into 46 simple pages, plain enough for every farmer, fishmonger, or founding father to understand. Common sense conjured up a vision of a very democratic America, still to be an America in the making. The pamphlet quickly becomes a sensation, a best-selling how-to book on making revolution. Some say 100,000 copies of this were published. Translate that into population rates today, that would be like selling 20 million books through Amazon, Barnes Noble. That's an awful lot of communicating colonists. Now contemplate the once unthinkable breaking with the King of England. Thomas Paine has finally told them what to do. Begin a new world, begin America. The cause of America is in a great measure the cause of all mankind. O ye that love mankind, ye that dare oppose not only tyranny, but the tyrant, stand forth. The army now swells with citizen soldiers ready to fight for Paine's ideals of a new world. Soldiers like Lieutenant Joseph Hodgkins. My dearest Sarah, I hope Providence will provide for us and carry me through all the troubles we have to meet in the way of our duty, and while we are absent from each other. A New England cobbler, 32-year-old Hodgkins, had joined the army to protest colonial rule in his town of Ipswich, Massachusetts. Music. Now he is pushing farther from his home, his tiny shoe shop, and his wife Sarah. I would not have you be uneasy about me, as I'm engaged in this glorious cause. I'm willing to go where I am called. Yet these citizen soldiers like Hodgkins present their own problem to General George Washington. Full of ideals, they lack training and experience. New York will be a battle on a scale none yet know, against the full force of the greatest army in the world. Washington harbors doubts. He had very rational fears. Any man of military experience would look at the past before them and realize this is not a foregone conclusion. Independence. Music. June 1776. The debate over America's political future has been pushed to the forefront. What once was considered an act of mutiny and treason now becomes a real possibility. Even a destiny. America is talking about liberty. Suddenly, in every tavern, in every meeting house, everywhere people congregate, they're talking seriously about this idea. Should we go for independence or not? And they're talking about the ideas that the Paine expresses. We have a grand, robust national dialogue. such as we've never had before or since, around a central theme that meant everything to everybody. The British are intent on stopping it. Having gathered their strength, they arrive in New York Harbor in dramatic fashion with 130 warships and nearly 25,000 men. They put on a show designed to scare even the most avid Remo. When the British come in the summer of 1776, it's like Star Wars, it's the Empire strikes back, it's the Death Star, these multiple acres and acres of white sail coming into the harbor. Must really have been a sight to behold. This is the most powerful military nation on earth that is bringing that power to bear on you. At his headquarters in Lower New York, Washington has a front row seat. The enemy will endeavor to intimidate by show and appearance. But remember that we're so just a cause. Victory is most assuredly ours. General George Washington. Outwardly, Washington shows a calm face, yet inside, he knows that defending New York will be the greatest test he has known. The Virginia farmer turned rebel leader is out of his league. Washington was faced with a tremendous task. He had no navy to speak of, and he was trying to protect a group of islands with Franklin, John Adams, John Hancock. See what they want to see: an army that has already stood up to the British. It pushes them to take the next step, the ultimate step toward independence of Virginia. Delegate Richard Henry Lee throws down the gauntlet. Why do we longer delay? Why still deliberate? Let this happy day give birth to an American republic. If we are not this day wanting in our duty the names of the American legislators of 1776 will be placed in posterity. Richard Henry Lee, the time is now to make a declaration, and committed to paper. Congress turns to a young Virginia lawyer, a rising star on American politics. At 33 years old, Thomas Jefferson is the ideal American, bright, ambitious, and a gentleman. Jefferson was a tall, slender, gentle, engaging man who wanted to be a scholar and never got a chance because he was such a good politician. Of all the revolutionaries, if I could sit with one at dinner, he'd be the one. But Jefferson embodies America's deepest conflicts and contradictions. Having grown up on a wealthy Virginia plantation, he inherited aristocratic credentials and the 200 slaves to prove it. Yet Jefferson holds to an ideal America, a place of opportunity for everyone, a place where every American is in charge of his own fate. The child nation is growing up and longs to move beyond the shadow of its parent. They had grown up and they wanted an independent say about how their laws were made and who governed them. And Jefferson knew all of the net. You know that he wasn't writing anything that was revolutionary in the eyes of his own people, only in the rest of the world. Mid-June 1776. Armed with these notions and a deadline of 2 weeks, Jefferson locks himself into a Philadelphia boarding house. He sat in one room in the July sweltering heat of Philadelphia with the to advance from that subordination in which they have hitherto remained. The opinions of mankind impelled him to the change. Thomas Jefferson. It is a heady task for a fairly young mind. Every word must contain a reason to die, for every sentence and urgent cause to justify rising up against a king. Think about, the Declaration of Independence, a terribly radical document. That document says that if the government isn't treating you the way you think it should, and if you suffer this mistreatment over a period of time, you've got the right to rise up and destroy that government to change it. That's a radical thing to say. But Jefferson soon stumbles over the central question of the revolution. It hangs in the hot air. Who will become a free American? In Britain, the elite legislated. Now Jefferson's pen could reinvent all that would the new America mean. Rights for every man, woman, child, and even slave. Who's in and who's out? Who's included? Does this mean everybody? Just mean only the rich? Does this mean property holders? How far do we go? Who's included in this new nation? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Jefferson reaches for the highest ideals, but the contradictions of his words come back to haunt him. Music. All the talk about freedom and liberty, all of this reaches the ears of nearly 500 1,000 colonists who are black, that's 1/5 of the population. Slavery already divides the colonies. Now with the talk of independence, it takes front row. Some colonists draw the line at giving liberty to slaves, others bristle at the hypocrisy of fighting for independence while sanctioning slavery. Jefferson himself remains divided. His own slaves watch that all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You don't think, his slave said, right on you, right, you know, right on Thomas, that this is precisely what we want. Many slaves choose not to wait from cities and plantations across America. Blacks began an exodus. They flee on Washington's plantation. We know that 17 slaves ran. Stephen, 20 years old, a cooper by trade. Deborah, a 16-year-old woman. Peter, an old man, 23, fled from Jefferson. These people had made decisions. What's best for them, patriot or loyalist, didn't really matter. What's my best bet? What does a band like Jefferson make of this? When the slaves fleeted, well, it throws in his face the notion of the enlightened slave master, and it comes upon him with great force. I think if it hadn't before, this is a fundamental contradiction in this whole revolution project between fighting for unalienable rights and holding slaves. He knew that. Jefferson takes aim at slavery with scathing indictments of its wrongfulness. He puts them in his draft, yet falls short of calling for the end of slaveholding. Music. Major battles are looming. Compromises must be made in Philadelphia. His draft will soon be thrown to the varied interests in Congress. They will tear it apart, while in New York the Continental Army prepares to put its life on the line for the dream of independence. Late June 1776, while Congress works on independence in Philadelphia, 100 miles north on the bluffs of Brooklyn Heights, the Continental Army faces more urgent realities. They dig in for the fight to come. Every day they expect an attack. Every day it fails to arrive. Lieutenant Joseph Hodgkins oversees the building of fortifications. He grows tired of waiting. My dear Sarah, I long to see you. Fortifications. The British continued to pour into their camp on Staten Island. Throughout the summer, their force swells as the king sends more ships with more troops. Washington watches and waits. The impeccably cool gentleman from Virginia remains perplexed by the British, who gather strength but show no sign of attacking. Day after day, week after week, he can only sit and wonder. Very unexpectedly, to me, another revolving Monday is arrived before an attack upon this city or a movement of the enemy. The reason of this is incomprehensible to me. General George Washington, the flotilla of British ships, barbs just off the tip of Manhattan, waiting for even more reinforcements, biding their time, wearing down rebel nerves. What Washington needs is a navy to stand up for the Goliath of the British Empire. What he gets is a slingshot, tiny concept he hopes will have a huge impact. Its code name, the Turtle. It's the world's first combat submarine designed to harass the world's mightiest navy, made of oak. Covered in tar, the tiny craft fits just one person with a bicycle-like method. The engineer propels the vessel underwater. The drill. He will fasten kegs of gunpowder and a fuse to his victim's hull. But the simple weapon is not simple enough. The Turtle will be used only once during the Battle of New York. At night, she sneaks up on the British flagship, the Eagle. But fastening the explosives to the hull proves too difficult. The Turtle is forced to make a hasty retreat, spotted and pursued by British longboats. The keg of gunpowder, the erstwhile torpedo, floats down the Hudson River, where it goes off by itself harmlessly. A giant column of water shot up as the bomb went off, and people on the shores were looking on in astonishment. But that was the end of the experiment. It will be words, not bombs, that deliver Britain the strongest blows. Was 3 days of debate in Congress, in which Congress took out 89 different things, including any language criticizing the practice of slavery, and Jefferson just sat there writhing through the whole thing. The issue of slavery is left for another time. There are flickers of doubt. They're bothered by it. They can't fix it. They kick it down the road. They basically postpone the problem to be reckoned with on another day. That day became the Civil War. It was a pretty bad day, but it's not that they're not bothered by it. They know what's wrong. They just don't know how to deal with it. The pressure of time once again intervenes. On July 2nd, the matter of independence must be put to a vote. It passes. Music. Day of July 1776 will be the most memorable in the history of America, solemnized with pomp and parade, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other. From this time forward, forevermore. John Adams, Congressional Delegate Adams, is a little off on the date, but close 2 more days are necessary to hammer out the final declaration. On July 4th, independence becomes written fact. Within days, copies travel by horseback throughout the colonies. Music? No one had set out to create a war of independence, yet they had delivered one in the town squares. All over the country, church bells are ringing, and people were huzzaing. A crowd was applauding. People really did believe the birthday of the New World is at hand. These united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, absolved from all allegiance to the British crown. All political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is, and ought to be totally dissolved. For those who had only imagined such a document, its realization is inspired together or hang separately. That was literal. They are outlaws, and if they fall into the hands of the British Army, they think they're going to swing from a tree. It is the reckoning at the hands of King George that is on the minds of the signers, and for everyone across the colonies who supports independence. July 1776. Across the colonies, the reaction to the Declaration of Independence is deafening. For it or against it, it's clear that there is no turning back. It is a war that will make or unmake America. The Declaration of Independence does change what the war is about. Up until that moment, the war had just been about forcing the British into a point where they'd be prepared to renegotiate the terms of membership in the empire. But after that moment, it's about getting the British to acknowledge independence. Music. In New York, patriots pulled down a statue of King George is a symbolic deed, but a useful one too. The lead is immediately sent off and melted down to make musket balls. 42,000 bullets will come out of fallen King George, and every one of them will be necessary. The battle they have been waiting for has arrived. July 12th. 3 p.m., the British unleashed their guns. Only 8 days after the Declaration of Independence, the British answer with a barrage only the world's most powerful empire could muster. Foreign soldiers and citizens alike freeze with fear. A lot of these soldiers were 16, 17 years old, fresh off the farm. Some of these American soldiers were drunk in their cups, as the expression was, and so it was really kind of a disaster and a really inauspicious beginning to the battle for New York. For the Americans, George Washington is furious. The British have made clear their power. Now, inexplicably, they stop the attack. As quickly as the barrage comes, it ends. It is merely a crushing military defeat. It wasn't about humiliating the colonists. It was about showing them that British liberty was something worth having. The British, having amply displayed their might, now counter with an invitation to talk peace. But how makes us small yet costly miscalculation. The message he sends is addressed simply to George Washington, a breach of protocol that is instantly recognizable. The British are in a very difficult position if they address the latter as His Excellency George Washington, Commander-in-Chief. They're effectively recognizing the legitimacy of the Continental Army. For Washington, this is a critical thing. He needs to be recognized. They are equals. After all, Howe commands an army, Washington commands an army. The messenger and his various letters is rebuked several times. Finally, the letter is accepted, but by then Washington wants no part of it. He sets aside the letter without opening it. The Americans will not consider negotiating. So high is the vanity and the insolence of these men. Their leaders seem to risk everything so that blows and war seem inevitable. Ambrose, British Secretary, August 12, 1776. There will be no peace. Instead, the Continental soldiers will have to deliver America. By war, the British might will soon return, but when and where remain a mystery. Joseph Hodgkins redoubles his efforts. My dear Sarah, the posts are not going as quickly as I expected. It is thought this fleet will get all the strength they can before they make an attack on us, but we are awaiting and expecting them every day. Joseph Hodgkins, this will be a different scale of warfare than these soldiers have ever known. On the eve of battle, some sit down to prepare their wills, aware that their first real battle with the British continent. Music. Nymphs of this isle are in wonderful tribulation, as the fresh meat our men have got here has made them as riders as satyrs. A girl cannot step into the bushes to pluck a rose without running the most imminent risk of being ravished. British officer, their leader, also takes full advantage of his time foreign, having taken one of his officers' wives for a lover. General William Howe lets the days slip by in his private conquests. George Washington can afford no such pleasures back in Manhattan. The general is losing his famous cool as he waits, he guesses and second guesses every plan and every defense. He too is about to face the biggest battle of his life, and it will not be on his terms. It is the British who are running this show. Late August, Long Island, D-Day. On a warm August morning, Howe moves his army. More than 15,000 British soldiers now march toward the American positions for the first time in the brand new War of Independence. The British will test the strength of the American army head-on. Music. The British attacked first with 2 columns, taking the Continentals in a frontal assault. Foreign, the 2 sides face each other in massive lines, often the mere 100 yards apart. They gave everybody a couple of tots of rum just to get them liquored up enough to do this. The Americans didn't have that discipline. They didn't know it. This is European-style warfare, where nearly all the Continentals, it is their first taste of it. Person in the 20th or 21st century looks at those linear battle formations of the 18th century as they seem to be struck by the stupidity of these things, but that really these tactics and these formations are predicated upon the state of technology at the time in open field battles and in smaller forces. Washington has not prepared for this. By 10 a.m. the British break through the rear ranks and devastate the lines of the Continental Army. The worst possible thing that can happen in those situations is to have a complete rupturing of your line, a complete break in which men panic and everybody flees basically for themselves. It is, without a doubt, the most demoralizing, disheartening sort of experience these soldiers could have. Possibly felt. The rebel army in a state of panic flees among them. The young Lieutenant Joseph Hodgkins, he watches his soldiers break a sight. He will never forget loving life in the woods, and in the night the enemy marched out 2 different ways. We were obliged to go through fire and water. It seems the day has come that in all probability depends the salvation of this country. Joseph Hodgkins. The army struggles back minus the 300 dead and 1,000 captured. George Washington watches in shock. His army had not withstood the battle. He had failed, and the danger is far from over. At Brooklyn Heights, the army is trapped on all sides. The British Navy commands the waterways to the west from the east and south. Howe's army closes in on the shattered Continental defenses. All looks lost, but the end would not come just yet. In a last effort to save his army, Washington orders an immediate retreat to start at nightfall. Under the cover of darkness, the army begins to move stealthily, using every ferry and fishing boat available to them. Music all through the night. Soldiers are ferried across a narrow slip between Brooklyn and Manhattan. They soon run out of time, but they get one final providence: music. As morning breaks, a strange and eerie fog sets in over New York Harbor, engulfing the area in a near blackout. It is their salvation. The British see, and British are met with an empty camp. The Continental Army, just hours before on the verge of defeat, has vanished overnight. The failure to capture them and to really put a stop to the war by rounding up the rebel forces really was perhaps one of the greatest blunders of the war, because it was in New York with the greatest armada, the greatest number of men that they had at any time during those 8 years. The British lost their best opportunity to win the war at a stroke. Music. The remains of the rebel army recuperate, dispirited and defeated. They can only wonder what will happen next. Having made it off of Long Island with the others, Lieutenant Joseph Hodgkins now has a moment to communicate with his wife, Sarah. Her words are those of many back home across the colonies, a mixture of immediate fears and distant hopes. My dear husband, I desire to be thankful that you've got off of Long Island. I think things look very dark on our side, but it has been observed that man's extremity was God's opportunity. Sarah Hodgkins. Music. George Washington is wrecked. He has come within inches of losing his entire army. and along with it the cause of independence. Now, he knows he must abandon New York City. The Continental Army is in no shape to fight again. They leave the city and go north along Manhattan Island. A few months ago, they were being treated as heroes. Now they are in full retreat. Washington's reputation has plummeted too. His inexperience and mistakes had been costly. His ability to lead an army is now severely in question. Soon he will receive challenges from within his own ranks. Back in 1776, you would have suspected that this guy would be out of a job pretty soon. Things were not going well. The dream of a new world, Thomas Paine's vision, seems more return to their homes, perhaps as British subjects evermore. My dear Joseph, I hope if we live to see this campaign out, we shall have the happiness of living together. It will trouble me very much if you should engage again your most affectionate companion. Until death, Sarah Hodgkins will stay and retreat with the remains of the army toward an uncertain future for himself, for the army, for the cause of independence. The revolution will go on, but it is about to enter its darkest days. Music. Foreign music. September 1776, New York. The rebel army is in retreat, pursued by the British up the Isle of Manhattan. In battle after battle, the colonial army is sent running, overwhelmed by the British forces and their superior power. Music. Two sides engage at Kips Bay, then up Manhattan at Harlem Heights, and again north in White Plains. Only one lone American outpost prevents the total loss of New York and control of the Hudson River. Fort Washington, a garrison named after His Excellency George Washington himself, and now it is under a massive attack. George Washington watches the terrifying scene from just across the Hudson River. His last hold on New York is fading fast. Nearly all of his officers had recommended abandoning it. Fort Washington was not built to defend itself against such a sizable British onslaught. The Continental soldiers prepare themselves for a last stand, but they are in no shape for heroics. A month of steady defeats have left them exhausted. Now again, they are outnumbered 3,000 of them against 8,000 Royals. It was Washington's most trusted General Nathaniel Greene who had convinced the commander to defend the fort. Greene, a young and talented Rhode Island officer, had over time become Washington's most trusted confidant, but this time, following his advice, is a disaster. Washington trusts this very capable and energetic subordinate, and Greene was wrong. The British Army is unstoppable. Not only do they have the numbers, they put their big guns out in front. They unleash a fierce battalion of German fighters called the Hessians. The Hessians are unmistakable from their armored helmets to their expertise with the bayonet. They are a near mythical vision from the old world. England has used foreigners for centuries to help fight their wars, but in America the Hessians create a new specter, at once feared and hated. They are seen as outsiders in a conflict between brothers. They quickly gain a reputation as detested mercenaries. The Hessians did not regard themselves as engaged in the Civil War, and wherever the German mercenaries went, oftentimes there were allegations of all sorts of brutality, ranging from sexual violence to a stealing of supplies. These European fighters have been trained under a different set of ethics than the colonial army, and almost medieval sense of warfare plucked from society's cast-offs and often pressed into service against their will. The Hessian soldiers are ruthlessly drilled into fighting machines. Their rewards, when they receive them, come in the form of pride and a fair share of whatever plunder they can get their hands on. In America, they sang songs about their chance for treasure. Go with us to America. There will be enough for all. There will be silver, gold, and money, everything that a man seeks in the world. All that a man seeks there is in America. Essentially, the Hessians operated according to a code that made sense in Germany, but was very different from anything that Americans had been familiar with. On this day, the Hessians earned their worth. They lead the British in overwhelming Fort Washington in mere hours. Music. By afternoon, chance to gaze upon the faces of the exhausted rebel army they have pursued for months. It is a sight that leaves them shocked. A great many of them were lads under 15 and old men, and few of them have the appearance of soldiers. Their odd figures frequently excited the laughter of our soldiers. Captain Frederick Mackenzie, British officer, the King's men, had been fighting a wretched army, a band of citizens with little training. As the smoke clears over the dead and wounded, an amazing sight takes both sides by surprise. A young woman sits by her dead husband's side, but she had not been an idle bystander. When John Corbin fell from wounds, Molly Corbin stepped up to the cannons firing on the British with the rest of the Patriots. The British quickly send Molly Corbin home there. After the war, she will die in obscurity. But on this day, the rebels will not forget the woman who evoked their cause. If this war is to persist, every citizen, man, woman, and child will be called upon. I feel mad, fixed, sick, and sorry. This is a most terrible event. Its consequences are justly to be dreaded. General Nathanael Greene, half the army, is captured at Fort Washington, New York, and control of the mighty Hudson falls squarely into British hands. Some begin to wonder whether the rebels can actually deliver an independent America. I was never in such an unhappy, divided state since I was born. I am wearied to death. General George Washington. The Americans in 1776 have encountered nothing but reverses. Its defeat followed by defeat, withdrawal followed by withdrawal. This really negatively affects the moral of this force, and perhaps more importantly affects the morale of some of his subordinates. Difficulties. General Charles Lee, some of Washington's own generals, now take their aim at his reputation. Washington and the army at their weakest and most vulnerable will soon have to face another battle, a power struggle at the very top. The revolution is about to stumble. November 1776. George Washington's Continental Army is in full retreat across New Jersey. He has just lost New York, and with it half his army. Washington cannot afford another confrontation. Hundreds had died, many thousands more had been taken as prisoners of war. Enemy captives are not something the British had planned for in this rebellion. Now they are forced to confront the problem. Some they know what to do with, and so they're going to use the Sugar Hut on a number of other large structures that can quickly be made secure. They're also going to use prison ships of all the places of internment. The ships quickly become the most notorious. Thousands are thrown into the holds of decommissioned warships there with inadequate food hygiene, and air disease runs rampant. Starvation is common. Being here is almost worse than a quick death on the battlefield. Some of these ships would have 1,000 men, 1,000 prisoners, and perhaps a dozen a day would be taken out, dead and buried in the shallow graves on the sandy shores of Brooklyn. I now found myself among a collection of the most wretched and disgusting-looking objects that I ever beheld in human form, now shriveled and surrounded with the horrors of sickness and death. Here thought, I linger till death should terminate. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe to Liberty Legends for more. Hit that like button to support the channel, and I'll see you in the next